Story from USA Today. Experts held war games on their Trump versus Biden election. Now, if you remember, Liz Harrington was on, when was she on? Wednesday. And she talked about this. And it's a story that has been floating around a little bit, but has not received a lot of mainstream news coverage. But I thought it was interesting when I first read this on Tuesday about this little war game, quote unquote, war game scenario that mainly Democrats had planned out. Well, finally, USA Today got a hold of the story. They met virtually on Zoom for 4 days over 2 weeks in June to hold simulations known in the military and intelligence communities as war games. There were 67 players, many of them high-profile critics of President Donald Trump, and included law professors, retired military officers, former senior U.S. officials, and political strategists, and, of course, attorneys. Instead of mapping out a geopolitical conflict, the group looked ahead to the November 3rd election, now less than 90 days away, and explored how the race between Trump and Biden could turn into a post-election crisis. John Podesta, former top aide to President Obama, and President Bill Clinton's former chief of staff, played Biden. Two outspoken Republican critics of Trump, David Frum, and Bill Kristol, portrayed the president. After gaming out various scenarios, the group said its conclusions were, quote, alarming. In an election taking place amid a pandemic, a recession, and rising political polarization, the group found a substantial risk of legal battles, a contested outcome, violent street clashes, and even a constitutional impasse. Quote, we assess with a high degree of likelihood that November's elections will be marked by a chaotic legal and political landscape, said the Transition Integrity Project, which organized the war games. The winner may not, as we assess, likely will not be known on election night as officials count mail-in ballots. The period of uncertainty provides opportunities for an unscrupulous, you know who they're talking about, right? You know who they're about to talk about, right? An unscrupulous candidate to cast doubt on the legitimacy of the process and set up an unprecedented assault on the outcome. No, they're not talking about Hillary, Jody. They're not talking about Hillary Clinton. That was in 2016, an unscrupulous candidate who cast doubt on the legitimacy of the process. No. They're talking about Trump now. In the 6 weeks since the tabletop exercise, the group's organizers said their fears of a messy outcome have only grown. Last week, Trump floated the idea of delaying the election, though he was quickly rebuffed by both Democrat and Republicans, as well as several states, to look to expanded mail-in voting because of the coronavirus pandemic. Trump has repeatedly warned of fraud, suggesting that this year's presidential race will be the greatest election disaster in history. In its 22-page report, the Transition Integrity Project. Now, remember, these are people who are all anti-Trumpers. All of them. Every single one of them are anti-Trump. They all hate the guy. They all think that he's going to sit there and contest the results of any type of... If Trump gets blown out, he would never leave the White House, they think. In his 22-page report, the project warned of tactics Trump could deploy to halt counting of mail-in ballots, lawsuits seeking injunctions, shutting down the U.S. Postal Service, ordering the censure and sequestration of ballots deemed fraudulent. And yet, while concerns mostly centered on actions Trump might take, the project found a scenario in which Biden narrowly loses the Electoral College while winning the popular vote and could lead to outrage on the left, resulting in mass protests, challenging the election outcome, and perhaps an impasse as well. In addition to Podesta, Frum, and Crystal, participants included former DNC committee chairwoman Donna Brazil, former Republican National Committee Chairman Michael Steele, and the former Democrat governor of Michigan. These are all anti-Trump people. By the way, in these war games, they had mapped out that it's possible that some of these states may secede, Jody. That if Trump wins, then you'll just have some of these states that secede and just bow out and say we're done. And this is just some of the stupidest stuff I've ever read. And the only thing that would be against Biden is that if Biden somehow, he pulled a Hillary, won the popular vote, lost the electoral college, then there's violence in the streets. But the rest of it, it's all going to be Trump's fault. No matter what, it's all going to be Trump's fault. He's going to do everything in his power to stay in the White House. I mean, these people really do think he's a power-hungry guy. I think that with Trump, I think he enjoys being president most of the time. Not all the time. But I think he enjoys being president. But I think the moment he's voted out, I think he can't wait to be really unplugged. I think he can't wait to get it. Because if you think the news media is going to ignore former President Donald Trump, you haven't been paying attention. They're going to love former President Donald Trump. Now, listen, I hope it doesn't happen, until the next election. I hope that he serves another term. But this idea that he's a power-hungry individual who's never going to leave the White House, it's pure stupidity. If he was that power-hungry, why did it take him so long to run for president? If he was that power-hungry, you watch all these documentaries about the 2016 election, and apparently Trump and his team, they were never expecting to win. This is what the popular tale is that they did not have a speech ready, Jody. That they did not have a speech ready. That they thought this is Hillary's going to win, thank God, and we don't have to be president of the United States. And all of a sudden, Trump's now power hungry, and he's never going to leave the White House. How does it go from that to where we are now, where Trump's this power hungry dictator who's never going to leave the Oval? The fact of the matter is, what they want to do is scare the hell out of everybody. They want to make everybody think that Trump will never leave, that Trump's a dictator, that Trump is going to screw around with the elections, when it's the Democrats who are screwing around with the elections. It's the Democrats who want to come up with vote harvesting. It's the Democrats who want to change the way we vote in less than 90 days. The Democrat primary did not go as planned. Remember when they tried to change up the primary system on the Democrat side, and they had there were the early states that went and voted. What was it? The Iowa caucuses. They didn't have a winner of the Iowa caucuses for a few weeks, and they spent well over a year planning that out. And now they want to change the entire way we vote, where everybody gets mailed a ballot. Every single person gets mailed a ballot. Let me ask you this. How many times do you get mail for somebody else at your home? Jody, do you ever get mail for somebody else at your home?
Oh, yeah.
Now, you probably don't open their mail because you're a good citizen.
You're right.
But whether it's someone who used to live at that address or whatever, things get messed up in the the process.
A block over or
Sure.
straight over, yeah, happens all the time.
We get mail sometimes for people who we know used to live at our address. Mm-hmm. And, whether it's someone who is in that home who, they had that mailing address, but they never forwarded it, whatever it may be, we still get mail. I'm pretty sure that if we had mail-in balloting in Texas for this election, we would get more than our needed ballots. I'm fairly confident we would get at least 1 to 2 more ballots than we should have. How are you going to fix that? How are you going to deal with, now, if it's people who have morals and ethics and everything else, they may say, oh, that's not my ballot. I may need to throw that away. I should not do that. A lot of people don't have morals or ethics out there, folks. And they want Joe Biden to win. And if they can just mail, I mean, do you really trust? I mean, again, I know we have some Postal Service folks who listen to the show. I do not mean to disparage you in this, but do you really trust the U.S. Postal Service to get this 100% right? Do you really trust that your neighbor won't end up with your mail? Do you really trust that someone won't, I don't know, drive by when you're not home and pick up your ballots out of your mailbox? You really trust that system? I don't. You think porch pirating is bad now? All somebody has to do is drive behind the Postal Service truck. Okay. Oh, they got their ballots, it looks like. Let me open up their mailbox. Got them. Chad, that's against the law. Yeah. Nevada, they passed this law where, where they could have mail-in balloting for the entire state, and volunteers can go into nursing homes and say, hey, here's your ballot. Why don't you go ahead and fill it out? I'll take it from you. Oh, you need to vote. Remember, vote for Joe. He cares about you. It's not about safety. It's not about any of that. I mean, the Democrats are trying to rig this entire thing. They're trying to change the way you vote. Trump's looking at it going, doesn't look like a lot of people have a problem sitting in line to go to the grocery store. Doesn't look like people have a problem in line going to Home Depot or Lowe's or some of these other stores. I think they can wait in line to go and vote. Democrats, though, they want to send everybody a ballot. Remember, Democrats think everybody on earth needs to vote. Some Democrats believe that if you're illegal, if you're in the country illegally, you need to vote. How does that work, by the way? If you are here illegally, do you get a ballot? How do they know? I mean, where's the safety? Where's the security in all of this? Yet the Democrats want to say it's Trump who cannot accept the results of the election, and it's Trump who is going to steal the election. Sounds like to me the Democrats are setting that up. 770-5790, 1-800-687-0790. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO. We'll be right back. Let's see, Jody, can we play that audio? Joe Biden, he's doing more interviews from the basement of his home, and he's speaking to Yahoo News today. And I guess I did not hear the first part of the question, but I believe the question had to deal with the Latino community and why Biden does not necessarily enjoy full support from the Latino community as much as he may from the African-American community. And this is what Joe Biden had to say.
What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things. What you all know, but most people don't know, unlike the African-American community, with notable exceptions, the Latino community is an incredibly diverse community with incredibly different attitudes about different things.
Yeah. So in other words, from Joe Biden, all black people think the same, and the Latino community, there's a little diversity of thought there in the Latino community, not so much in the black community. And by the way, I guess I have to applaud Joe Biden for finally saying how Democrats think about the black community, that the black community, it's just, hey, no, a few people think differently in the African-American community, but overall, According to Joe Biden, all black people think the same. There's no diversity of thought or opinion in the black community. It's just get behind the Democrat. And in the Latino community, and Biden probably hates this, there's just a lot of diversity there. And people have their own thoughts. Wow. Can you imagine Trump? Imagine for a second Donald Trump being asked about the black and Latino communities. And Trump saying that all black people think the same way. Because that's what Joe is saying. So Joe Biden live from his Delaware home. See, this is why I'm telling you, they can't allow this guy to debate. The campaign cannot allow Joe Biden to get on a debate stage with Donald Trump. It's just, there's no way. It can't happen. Oh, a 13-second clip really does expose how the Democrats feel about the minority communities.